So let's take we got quite a bit of time. Let's take some questions from the chat room. Anybody would like to ask any network-related questions or would like to follow up on things that we already talked about, we can do that as well. We've got quite a few of you that are live right now. Let's look at how things have been through the day. Got 80 people on there right now. Can I flip over to that? Is that possible? Is there technology that would allow me to show you what we're doing right there? Boy, something happened. There was must have been the commercial. Everybody dropped off. And then we picked back up again on that piece. So that's one of those things. I think some of you are mentioning, Security Plus study group. That would be awesome. That would kind of be awesome. One of my challenges, I don't have pop quizzes for Network Plus or Security Plus or anything else. I only have A+ pop quizzes. And I don't have study groups that are other than A+ or Network Plus. This takes quite a bit of time to get things going on the study group. There's a whole presentation obviously has to be built around what we've got here. Setting this up, it's already here. The studio is already ready to go. So that piece isn't a big deal. It takes me a number of minutes to kind of connect everything up, but that would be easy. It really is, it's the Live Lab bundles for $99, Robert. It really is the preparation that takes the most time. So it kills a good day to piece all of that, to get your questions in place, to send out the emails, to do that. The link to the online labs was a TCP link because it was web browsing. See, now you're thinking, now you got the idea. I wish I had time for a Security Plus study group. It would be a lot of fun. A lot of what I do during the day is security related. So that's kind of in my wheelhouse. The problem is just time. If I'm putting these things together, and every weekend, the weekend is when I have time to do videos, to do everything, because I work during the day. So during the weekend is when I can sit down and create more videos, create more content, build out the presentations, record the content, edit the content, post the content, and rinse and repeat. Right, my weekends would be gone. I would not have time to be able to do anything but live events. So that's a little bit of a challenge. It's not the setup of the live sessions necessarily. It's the content of the live sessions that really is the piece. Yeah, maybe a shorter version. That's not a bad idea. You know what the problem is though? There's just too much content for a shorter version. I try to make these an hour and they always go over. I think maybe I can get out of here in 45 minutes. Nope. And you don't understand on the questions. I'm going to look up the number of questions I got this month. There were 148. Really not quite that many. If I do and once I get rid of people saying I don't have a question, let me do a quick count of. I used the wrong Excel piece. How many are on here? Is it count or count A? Is it count A? We're now going to have an Excel class. All right, everybody. Let's learn how to do 79. So I got 79 real questions out of that's still a lot. I did what, 4, 5, 6? So I didn't get a chance to really do a lot of these. Yeah, the video wasn't broke. I was just not moving. We were doing okay there. There is, I think, a single topic study group. This is the challenge, of course, still involves a lot of prep. So that's one of the problems I had, is being able to make all of those things fit in. Quite honestly, what really keeps the site going are the videos. So if I spend more time making the videos, it goes a long way towards perhaps giving me the option later on to be able to do a Security Plus study group. So I think if I can get more courses done, more videos posted, that, okay, take a breath and work more on live content, because I love doing the live content. I built the studio just to do the live content and get those things going. I mean, this is quite a gig now. I can do live. I'm good. Hey, we got a caller. Let's see if we can have the call actually work this time. Hello, caller. What's your name?
This is Ulick Thomas.
How are you? Thanks for calling. You have a question for us?
Yeah, I have a question. My current employer is requiring that all the employees in our department take the have a Net Plus certification by the end of September.
Oh.
What would you say is a normal time of studying for the Net Plus exam? I think I'm scheduled to take it on the 14th, or I may change it to a week out. But wanted to find out what would you say is a normal time of studying for the Net Plus exam to be able to pass it?
Wow, he's giving you a month, and you have to pass it in a month.
Well, we've had 4 months.
Oh, okay.
To study. So I've been studying. I've been in the industry, telecommunication management and telecommunications. I'll say about 17 years.
Okay.
But finally getting into the network side of it, and having to take this subnetting was my biggest challenge, which I still haven't gotten down. But wanted to know, like, realistically, before taking the exam, what's the average time of studying for it to be prepared?
And that's a question I get. It's one of the frequently asked. It's in the top 10 of what people are asking about it. And at least you've got some background you can rely on. The answer, of course, is it depends, because there's some people that are jumping into networking that know nothing about networking. There's a lot of college classes and even high school classes that started up this month, and they are jumping right into the beginnings of this is a wire, and inside of this wire is the network, and this is Ethernet, it's twisted pair. They're really starting at the beginning. You at least have the benefit of kind of understanding the overarching concepts of what a VPN does and what DHCP does, and those things. At least you've got at least a grasp of those things, and the Network Plus really just drills down into it. I would think in your case that you could spend a month or two and really get into it. I took my Network Plus, I took my Security Plus first. I did it backwards. I took Security Plus first because I was in a security role. Then I took Network Plus. Then I took A Plus. So I knew a good bit about security. I think I took about a month before I took that one. And I knew networking was where I came from. So networking I had pretty cold. But you look at networking. Let me flip over to, I know you'll see this on delay, but I'm going to show the folks that are watching on the live stream. If you just look at, here we go, copper and fiber connections, ST, SC, LC, MTRJ. There's 4 different fiber connections that are here. I've plugged in a lot of fiber in my time, and I still am not sure what a couple of those are. I mean, that's the reality of working in our industries. We know what we've worked with, but MTRJ, I don't know that I've ever worked with any MTRJ specifically. I've seen pictures. I know what it looks like. I've spec'd it out. I've seen it. I've definitely worked with LC. I worked a long time ago with ST. I've definitely worked with SC. MTRJ I've never touched. I've physically never touched that one. So that's one of those things that you now have to go into the exam and go and learn it. Oh, I didn't even know that existed. I guess I do need to know that for my exam, and then you at least learn that piece and you can go on your way. The other piece you mentioned, subnetting. Oof. That is a world, a science, a thought process that you first have to grasp and get into. And as I said on the live stream, if subnetting is a thing for you and it's just something you can't get, just don't even worry about it. Just say that if you even get a question, I'm just going to miss that one. I think you would be better off spending your time, because you have a month. You would be better off spending your time, because you're under the gun, to learn all these other things that you could perhaps get a question on and be able to understand, grasp it, and continue on. If you get a subnetting question, you got a 25% shot. That's not the best possible scenario. The best possible scenario, of course, would be to learn subnetting, but it's probably the most complicated, mess your brain up things on the exam. You'd be better off just kind of pass through that piece, and then you're much better off going through it. So I can't tell you that, there's a certain amount of time.
That was a scary part for me, because even graduating with my bachelor's from DeVry, I kind of didn't grasp it then, and it's been kind of like a scary monster kind of thing. But your question, your answer earlier that stated that it's going from the first question down to section 4 is only one question. You might get 1 or 2, and I said, whoo, Thank you, because
Yeah.
I thought that was a greater part of the exam.
Now, if you're somebody who's planning to go after your Network Plus and get a router manufacturer certification, they want you to know subnetting hard. They want to give you that question, and you got to have that question answered in a minute because you're going to get 10 more, and you got to get through them very quickly so you can get to the rest of the exam. That may be a good reason at that point to stop and really, really work on them or get a grasp. And sometimes you have to set up your network and a router and communicate out to another network before you're even getting to the point of, okay, I understand it now. I think, because in my world for subnetting, I'm trying to think back to when I learned subnetting, because I was around before we used IP. I had networks that had no IP on them, and we were running financial organizations with Novell networks, and Novell at the time did not run. It ran IPX. Yeah, you certainly can remember back to those days. The IPX piece was easy. I loved IPX. You just say, use IPX, and you're done. It automatically did everything. You didn't even have to touch it. And then they showed up and said, okay, now you have to decide your subnetting. What's your subnet mask going to be? What in the world are you talking about? I don't know. Well, now you need to also figure out your routes, and you need to define IP addressing. And at that time, there was no boot P. There was no DHCP. Everything had to be manually done, statically assigned. Gosh, I don't know. And you ended up having to dive into books. Where can I even find this information? There was no internet. Where can I even find this information on how to put these things together? I think learning IP, TCP IP, and learning subnetting allowed you to at least then get on the internet where you could then, surf around and find the information you need. So don't worry about the subnetting piece so much. Download the exam objectives, use it as a checklist, decide which things and how much you know. When you know about 85 to 90%, you can put a check mark next to every single thing that's on your objective sheet. You'll be ready to take the exam.
Okay, great. I thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for calling, and thanks for joining us on the live stream, and thanks for being on the call in. I'm glad the call in worked. I should have asked if he called in on the toll free line. So I guess that's the only number I gave out, because there is another line that's not the toll-free line that people could use. Let's go back to the chat room and see what people are talking about. There is a lot of different things that I had to worry about when putting up my very first TCP/IP network. That just takes me back to those days, being in that little room that I had all the servers in and trying to configure IP and getting it wrong. Getting it so wrong. That was the /26 network that I worked on back in the day. I think it's probably why I remember it so well, because it's your first IP network that you worked on. That's very, very good idea to go through that piece. There's a lot, and in the chat room, and Bruce even says in the chat room, yep, but you're going to need to know it if you start doing some of these others. It will catch up to you if you're going to be doing hardcore networking. It absolutely will. And you should know it. And here's the secret of subnetting. It's hard to grasp, but as soon as you get it, there's some kind of switch that turns on, and you start to get almost automatic with doing it. What I really should do is some videos that there is a mathematical way that I show in my videos to do it that works every time, and it's relatively simple to write out. And it's relatively simple to calculate. It takes everything in binary, calculates it in binary, and gives you the answer at the bottom. There are some ways to do subnetting, though, that are shortcuts. There's these things called, there's one author calls them magic numbers. I got a question about that. There's some really shortcutty ways to do subnetting. And once you understand subnetting, you start to use those shortcuts when you're doing it. Nobody sits down and writes everything out in binary when you're trying to manage a network. And quite honestly, a lot of the network administrators I work with, they go out and they have a subnet calculator. Well, let's type it in because they want to double check what they're getting in their head, especially if it's a subnet mask they just don't use a lot. The /26 I got. /27, let me think about that for a second. /28, I need to really think about that. That's one of those pieces that really becomes a challenge with those pieces. So Benny asks, is it possible to tunnel voice over IP's UDP through TCP? Oh, absolutely. You can tunnel any way you'd like. There are tunnels. There are TCP tunnels, UDP tunnels. There are tunnels that don't use TCP or UDP. There are, how about that one? There's a tunnel that doesn't use either of those. And you can put anything through a tunnel. So absolutely. There's some interesting tunneling technologies out there. We're so used to doing VPNs, IPsec tunnels, SSL tunnels. There are some people that will do tunnels over DNS. That's an interesting one. A DNS tunnel? Why would I do a DNS tunnel? That's a good question. Let me see if I can find one. Since we're on it, let's find a good one. Here's an interesting article somebody wrote on DNS tunneling. That's a pretty good article on splitbrain.org. And his article talks about DNS tunneling made easy. So the idea is that you could take your data, wrap it up in a DNS information, and send it off to the other side. The other side pulls the DNS. You have to have something on the other side that can then pull off the DNS, and now your data's inside of it. Why would you want to do that? Because a lot of places will filter out your TCP or UDP data, but they don't filter out DNS. So DNS slides right through and gets to the other side where you can unwrap it and then go wherever you'd like with it. Ooh, that's sneaky. That's why there's a lot of IPSs, next generation firewalls that detect DNS tunneling. In fact, on that same set of articles I found on those same Google links for DNS tunnel, there was a SANS Institute article or something that somebody wrote up for their reading room, how to detect DNS tunneling and be able to, I guess, ostensibly stop the DNS tunnel from going through. So whole write-up on finding the folks. There's this back and forth that we do in our industry. The bad guys do it one way. Now let's detect the bad guys doing it that way. You go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. There's a lot of, and there are, Chris mentions in the chat room, there's a lot of ways to look at doing tunneling. There's subnetting. There's a lot of videos on subnetting. There's a lot of content out there. It's one of those topics that everybody gets tripped up on, that everybody has to go through. So absolutely go out and find some videos out there. There are a lot of really good videos from a lot of really good places out on the internet. Maybe I'll make some more here eventually. I'm going to focus currently on my Linux videos though, so will be a lot of those coming through as well. All right, no more callers coming through there. I'll make sure I'm not ignoring anyone. Let's go back to the chat room. What other questions do we have? So many went through so fast. And I did have some questions come through. I couldn't get, let's go back to the ones that people sent in to me in my spreadsheet. Here we go. I got a lot up on my screen here. IP addressing subnet masks. I talked a little bit about the practical applications that are on the test, so we got some of that. Someone asked, do you think getting your MTA networking fundamentals certification is a good precursor to taking the Network Plus certification? That was Zach asked that. I thought I saw a Zach in the chat room. Maybe that's Zach's question. There is, for those of you not familiar with the MTA, that's the Microsoft Technology Associate. I'm making it up at this point, but it's their entry-level technology exam. My voice is going quickly. What they have is kind of an entry level that then takes you into something like the Network Plus certification or the Microsoft certifications. They try to start you at, this is a cable, this is a wire and what it does. So it's a little bit just under Network Plus. I think the Network Plus probably is a good place to start, but if you're somebody who's just never touched technology ever before, maybe the MTAs are a good choice for you. For instance, with CompTIA, if you are starting their A+ certification, they have something called the Strata certification that's a precursor to the A+. So before you even touch a computer, what is a computer? What is all this stuff about? And that prepares you then for doing things like installing operating systems, troubleshooting boot up processes, troubleshooting a blue screen of death, that type of thing. So the MTA is maybe a good choice for you. If you're somebody, though, you've worked with networks, you've configured networks, you've plugged in, you've done some packet captures, at least rudimentary packet captures. Maybe you don't understand what's in there, but you've done some. You're probably well beyond the MTA. Ray in the chat room asked the 543 rule. I think you may be teasing me a bit with the 543 rule. Are people still asking about this? I did get a question that came in today about the 543 rule. That might have been you, Ray. You've probably seen a sample question somewhere that talked about the 543 rule. You don't need to know anything about the 543 rule. Holy moly. That is an old, outdated coax repeater the rule that we use that technically was an IEEE idea that let me see if I can remember it. 5 segments. You can't go more than 5 segments using 4 repeaters and you need to have 3 devices somewhere on the network. There's the 543 rule. Worthless. Nobody has lines of coax going through their building that everybody plugs into that are connected with repeaters any longer. Completely outdated. Nobody uses it. You won't be asked on any exams what the 543 rule is. If you are asked what the 543 rule is on a practice test, then it is an outdated practice test, and that's a good alarm for you to let you know that you are looking at the wrong information. You need an updated practice test if they are still asking about the 543 rule. I was way back in the day working for a network analysis company. We take our sniffers around and plug them in. Network General was the original manufacturer of the sniffer product, and went to a school, a university. I think it was their oceanography building. I can even remember being there. It was a building in South Florida, so it was made of concrete. The entire building was nothing but huge, thick concrete walls. It was made for hurricanes. Nothing was taking down this building. If there's a hurricane, go to the oceanography building. You are in good shape. And they had drilled these big holes in it, and there was a big cable sticking out of one of the walls. And it snaked around up in the ceiling because you couldn't have anything through the ceiling. It was concrete, and these enormous coax cables, and he plugged in his sniffer to it. I said, what in the world are you plugging into? And he says, this is our Ethernet. And at that point, I had not even, I kind of got into networking during the Novell 215 coax days. But to me, coax was what they call thin net. It was these really thin, I wish I had one of the thin net cables with me. I could probably find one if I did some quick Google searches, but I just want to give you a feel of the thick net. In fact, there's a really good picture of some of these on here. I'm going to flip over. So ThickNet was this really thick cable, and it plugged into this big old box on the network. There's an enormous sized cable going through here. And there is this enormous, they call it a vampire tap that went into the cable and had a pointy thing. That's my technical term for it. It had a big pointy thing that broke the cable and stuck up into the coax so that it would be able to make connection with the single coax line that was inside of it. On the inside, you can almost see the big hole that's made in the coax when it went into the vampire tap to make its physical connection. How about that for a networking type? Here's a good comparison of thick net and thin net. Well, not a good one. It's a very small one. Of thick net and thin net. It's dramatically different in its size. So I started working with these, thought, wow, that's a big, thick wire to have to deal with. You don't have to know thick net. And I don't even think there's any 10-base. Is there 10-base 2 still in the Network Plus? There might still be. Let's find out, shall we? Any 10-base 2? Nothing. So you don't even need to know thin net. Let's see if they even have the word thin in there. You don't. So that technology you don't even need to know for your Network Plus. If you're getting asked about ThickNet and the 543 rule, then you're looking at the wrong thing. This is a good example of why we needed the 543 rule, because you were plugged in there. This ThickNet wound around the building and all the stations. There may be a repeater in between because the signal got too weak. So we put a repeater in. We kept the cable going all the way through the building. It snaked all the way through the building, all the way through, and everybody simply plugged into that cable, and that's how you networked. Isn't that something? If this cable broke anywhere along the line, everybody on that segment was down. It was so easy to break the network back then. But back then, it wasn't immediate access to email. We didn't have those things. It's a different kind of environment back in the day. Now everything has to be connected. You have to have 5 nines. You have to be up all the time. There needs to be redundancy. There needs to be multiple paths. It's a much more complex networking technology to be able to do that. So Chris asked in the chat room, pretty good question for everybody. You're welcome to answer as well. If you are an entry-level computer repair tech, and I have been one in my lifetime, are you expected to really touch anything network related? Or would that be just the person above you that does that? Or do you just fix individual computers when they have issues? Well, I'll tell you how mine happened, how my world got into networking. I started off, got a degree in college in business, so it wasn't even technical. I had a few technical classes. It wasn't even a technical business degree. It was a business management degree. And I got a job right out of school working at a computer company in South Miami. During college, I worked as an operator. I'm sorry for the people that have been through this story before, but we're going to do it again. In college, I worked as an operator in the supercomputer center at Florida State. And so I liked computers. I knew that was something that really interested me. The computer degrees at the time, especially for computer science, though, were very focused on programming. There was no internet. There was no web server. There was no online technologies. There was just programming, and that didn't really interest me that much. So I didn't go into computer science. I went and got a business degree. I got a job working in a computer store where I effectively delivered cables around and did some of this entry-level computer repair work. I would replace memory. I would swap out hard drives. I would install new hard drives. Used to be the memory would be on these big boards. I used to have one around here. It's just a big interface board you stick into the computer and upgrade the memory in the device. You did, and you had individual chips that you had to stick on the motherboard, not these easy to insert modules that we have these days. And that wasn't a lot of networking around that. But while I was at that computer place, the guy who did the Novell installation said, I'm going out to do an upgrade. And I said, and this was after hours, and I said, I would love to see that. The networking side of things really interests me. I'd love to see you do that. Can I just come along? He said, well, yeah, of course. Come on. It's a place you go anyway. It's one of our customers that you delivered computers to there today. Why don't you come with me? And it's up on the second floor, and we'll do this thing. And we did a Novell upgrade where we put all the 3.5-inch floppy disks in to upgrade the device. And he showed, here's the coax, here's the thin net that we use to connect it, here's the printer, here's the connections for this, here's the transceiver we use to connect into the Ethernet cables, and here we got to put the NIC card in the computer. I'm like, I know how to do that. I know how to put an adapter card in a computer. And he showed me how to load the drivers, how to connect everybody up, how they could connect to the file server. And I started doing those things. I got a job after that at an insurance company, and Windows 3.0 had just come out. And they said, we need somebody familiar with the desktop to be able to go to the 3.0 course. And so I did. And that's when I started to realize this whole networking thing connects everything, because the Microsoft course had about as much networking in it as it did anything else. Windows, obviously, extremely networkable operating system. So the first really big one, LAN Manager really wasn't picked up, but Windows changed everything with how we use the network. So I got into networking from there, and I learned we had a token ring network, we had Ethernet networks, we had wide area networks, and I eventually saw them using this box to plug into the network and look at all the frames, the protocols go by. These days we load Wireshark like we just don't even think about it. But in the day, there was no way to see what was going on. This was the first time. This was a $25,000 device they plugged into the network to be able to do packet captures, do decodes. And I thought, you could see the Windows device communicating to the server. You could see somebody logging in. You could see the rejection of the login. You could see the file transfer. You could see everything. And I realized if I can understand that, I could understand everything else that was going around. And that's how I got into networking. So there you go. Yeah, shadowing in the workplace. I think if you're somebody who does networking, there's somebody in your organization who's at the help desk that you've noticed they're really sharp. They're really good at what they do. And you notice they'd be really good at doing some of these other things. There's bound to be a router upgrade, a firewall upgrade, a new switch installation, a switch upgrade. There's something going on that you could drag them around. And I bet if you ask them, hey, we're doing an upgrade this weekend, you want to come see how to do that, they'll be right on top of that. And that's how you move up. People say, I don't want to be stuck in the help desk. Nobody is stuck in the help desk. Organizations put you in the help desk to understand what you know about the technology, and so that you can begin to understand how the organization's technology works. They want you out of there. They want to use you to move into these other spots. They don't want to have to hire from the outside. They want to hire from, I guarantee you, they want to hire from the inside. The best possible place that you can move from a career perspective, really the easiest to move from a career perspective, is move up within your existing organization. There's pluses and minuses to that, certainly. But the help desk is a trial. They know you're not going to be there long. And so they're going to move you up and out as soon as you're ready for it. So a good place to start. My first job out of college was quite literally delivering printer cables, delivering computers, delivering printers, and installing them on a desk and walking away. Not touching the operating system, not much of it anyway. And that moved into upgrading memory, upgrading hard drives. Again, not doing much of the operating system part other than maybe installing the operating system and walking away. But that's how it migrates. That's how it moves. So whatever you start as in networking, you'll get your Network Plus, and maybe now you're a lower level tech, you'll be in charge of making sure the computers are able to get onto the network, stage them, make sure the DHCP server is working properly. I guarantee you, there is no possible way you will ever run out of things to do from a networking perspective. There's just no way. I'm learning something new every day. I've been doing this for quite a few years, and I learn something new all the time. It's just out there for us to get. I see new things all the time. The network changes. The computers change. The applications we use change. 5 years ago, Twitter was just getting started. Now, of course, there's Twitter. What are you talking about? It's just constant motion. So that's one of the great things I like about technology, really. From Andrea, you are so entry level. You have friends and families, computers that you fixed. That's how I started working with computers. You just passed your A+ cert. Congratulations. I almost want to ask if you got the 700 series and got in just under the wire, or if you got the 800 series. Maybe you can answer in the chat. I have an Associate of Science in IT. Excellent. Does CompTIA have any job placement assistance? They really don't. Not much of one. They do have a program, though, that does that, but it's not for people like you that have gone through a formal education. You've gotten a degree. It may be worth asking them about it. I've looked into it. A lot of the things they do for job placement deals with people that have come out of the military that are now back in a civilian role, and they're looking for a position, but they may have some things like that I'm just not aware of. I'm not in any way associated with CompTIA. I don't really follow them to a lot of detail. I don't have anyone I talk to over there. I just keep it that way. So you passed the 800. That's great. That's it. You've got the latest A+ exam then to be able to do that. The way that the tech market works is you have to be able to start somewhere and prove your worth. It's actually really, really hard to find somebody who's really good with technology. So if you can find that person and get them going and move them up through the ranks, that's going to be a valuable thing. Lewis is taking his 702 today. Oh, we're with you. We're with you, Luis, so to be able to make that happen. I think the key for somebody, you've got a degree. And one of the challenges that most people get frustrated with is a formal education in a degree that you have doesn't help you much get a job now. It helps you get every other job that you're ever going to have. It does help a little bit. But I got to tell you, having that degree 5 years from now, 7 years from now, 10 years from now, when you're ready to go to somewhere else, it actually is very, very powerful, especially when you want to move into management. Very, very nice to have that formal degree. I have a lot of people I work with in technology that don't have a college degree because I'll tell you, for configuring a router, you don't need to know economics for that. You don't need to understand the intricacies of personnel management to be able to do that. The real use that these 4-year degrees help you with is later on when you want to get a business perspective of what your organization does and apply the technology to it, you'll be respected more if you got that 4-year degree. You just will be. That's just the way it works. So how do you get that job then? You have no experience, and you can't get experience to get a job. So it's that constant back and forth, the catch-22. I think your actual experience in getting the 4-year degree does help a bit. It proves you can be trained. So there is that. You need to get some practical experience elsewhere. Helping your friends and your families one way. I think maybe helping out and volunteering is another good way. There's in my area, there are libraries, there are nonprofit organizations, there are churches, there are places that perhaps you even go to that need help with technology. And that may be a good opportunity to talk to them and say, do you need somebody to come in once a week, once a month, make sure your antivirus is up to the latest version, maybe do some scans and make sure the machines are running right, answer any questions you have about problems you're having, fix that printer problem that you're constantly having. That's a good way to do it, and it goes on your CV. It goes on your resume so that you can say, oh, yes, first, you're volunteering, which is awesome. I volunteer at this organization. They have 10 computers. I manage the antivirus. That's what employers looking for. They're looking for experience that you have on a project. Anybody can say I installed antivirus. Great. Doesn't help me. But if you went through a process of maintaining 10 systems, they got a bunch of new computers in, we re-imaged the system, we moved over their data from one computer to the other, we connected them all in the same work group, we connected up their printers, because your interview, here's what they're going to say. What problems did you run into? Oh, well, we had this big problem where the driver that we got from HP was not really the correct driver for the printer we were using, but it was marked the correct driver. And we noticed when we installed it that it had this message on it and it wasn't working properly. Well, how did you resolve that? Well, we went on Google and we found this information. I talked to somebody else who just had that printer and they go, oh yeah, they released a new update to that. Go to the HP website. That's what they want to hear. They want to hear how you took an experience, a problem especially, what you did to solve the problem and how the problem was ultimately resolved. So put yourself in positions that will allow you to do that kind of thing. And that will give you that practical experience and not just on my resume, I did this for this amount of time. That's not experience. Working at a job for X number of months, years, days, that's not experience. The experience is what you did when you were there. That's what a potential employer is looking for. Whether you get that from your 4-year degree, whether you get it from that volunteering, doesn't matter where you get it. You got to have the stories. Collect the stories about the things that you did, and that goes the longest way on your interview. So hopefully that will help, Andrea. Let us know how that goes with the things that you're doing. I would love to hear more about these. I love hearing these stories of, I got my A+, we did the Network Plus, I took a job, we did these things, I moved to a different town, different city, I'm doing the things I wanted to do. I get to hear some great stories along that, and I love to. It's very motivating. Makes me want to do more videos. So that's very useful to have that. So if you have a 4-year degree in the A+, Chris says, do I wait and see if I get an entry level with A+, or do I get the Network Plus and try to find something? How do you know what certification to get? I say you go to your career builder, to your DICE, find the jobs you would like to do and see what they want. If you know somebody who works in a company, a big organization that has a help desk, ask them if they can introduce you to the help desk manager. They would love to talk to you. Help desk managers I've worked with a lot of help desk managers. They all want to network and talk with you. Find out who they are. See if you can grab some 15 minutes of their time and ask them, so I'm really interested in doing this type of thing that you do. What do I need to learn? What do I need to know so that I can prove to people like you and other help desk managers that I'm ready to take a job like this? They'll talk to you. People in this industry are so awesome because they love to talk to you about what they're doing. You just need to be introduced to them. If there's a help desk manager that I know, I would introduce you to them. I run into people now in the security areas, but find somebody who works in a big company or even a decently sized company and find out. It will help you in 2 ways. One is you'll get the information you need to find out what do I really need to know to nail this interview and land this job. And secondly, you now know somebody who's going to be looking for people soon. and they make sure you give them your resume, ask them for tips on things you should have on your resume, find out the piece. And while we're talking about resumes, let me answer a question, or really think about a question that I got earlier in the week. I have an associate who owns a franchise. This happens to be one that's kind of technology related. They do a lot of desktop publishing type work, a lot of graphics work. And he's been interviewing. He put out a notice to get a lot of resumes in. And we've been talking about that. And he had, he posted on Craigslist, we have a position open. I'm taking resumes. Send me your resume for this position with these requirements. And he of course got tons of resumes. He says it is remarkable how many resumes, just in the very top, right under the name and address, in exactly what your career goals are, there's misspellings. It's not a sentence. There's grammatical problems. And he says it's disappointing because now there might be some really good stuff under that. I'm not even going to pay attention. This is a job where you're doing graphics, you're doing computer work that's going to be printed on something for a client to take home with them. Misspellings are kind of a big deal. So it's interesting that you run into these situations where people aren't thinking about what they're giving out. In fact, this person, here's the story, is the person who sent him this resume went to the same high school as he did. And he says, well, I feel bad just throwing his resume to the side. I want to call him and tell him here are things that are tripping him up, which I thought was a great thing to do, because he wanted to mentor him and bring him along. Say, here, if you're going to send this resume out other places, change this. And the person who did the resume said, well, I did on my phone, and I was just kind of trying to do it quick and get it over to you. Don't do that. Don't do your you can do your resume on your phone, but don't do it quickly. Save it off, put it in your Dropbox, put it in your Evernote, have somebody read through it. If you folks are trying to find and network, there are people in this in this chat room on the Professor Messer website all the time who would love to look at your resume and give you feedback. And you may not take all the feedback or use all the feedback, but they'll tell you, oh, you have a misspelling there. I misspell stuff all the time. For those of you that get my daily pop quiz, I misspell things all the time. I mess things up on that all the time. Now, I have the benefit, of course, at going in and modifying it in real time, fixing the misspelling, fixing the coloring problem, fixing whatever it is, and reporting back, okay, it's fixed now. And then, 5 minutes later when somebody hits it, they'll never know I was that stupid. But I was, and I got called on it. They will be glad to tell you, oh, that's a misspelling, that's a problem. Take advantage of that. The resume is so important. Everything above the fold, get everything important in that first top part of the resume, not the bottom part of the first page. Anything that's on the second page, nobody will look at unless you specifically during the interview say, if you flip to the second page and look at this, I think that's important for you to know. They won't look at it. They won't read it. It's kind of frustrating, isn't it? You work so hard on this piece of paper and they don't read it. The machine scans it. You go through your first line of somebody just checking to see if you've got a pulse and that you really know what you're talking about. It's that second phone interview that's so important. And at that point, if you've misspelled anything, you didn't get that far. You didn't get the first call. And put in a PDF document, as Chris reminds everybody. Don't do a Word document. Don't do a Write document. Don't do anything other than a PDF. It needs to be a PDF. Even a PDF these days kind of sketchy. We used to not do Word documents, of course, because not everybody had a Word. A lot of things will read a Word format these days. It still may not come out formatted properly when you look at it. PDF at least preserves the formatting. PDF files are so full of malware and viruses that it's sometimes a difficult one to get in. Text-based is actually pretty darn good too. There's more work that goes into building those things out, but spend some time on your CV. Your curriculum vitae, your resume here in the United States. Spend some time on that. It really, really, really makes a difference. And people like my friend he's reading through them and he says, oh, it's painful. All of these, if they would have just spent more time, I would have actually read that one. It's the little things you just miss when you're working with them. All right. We have come to kind of the end of our end of the line. I've been doing this for a couple of hours and my voice is going out. So we're going to have to close up shop here and end the after show for the study group. But I appreciate everybody hanging on. We've still got quite a no. We only lost 15 people coming through. So I appreciate that. Thanks for hanging in there. We'll do another one of these next month. I have not set the date. This was a crazy week with back to school and all the things I had. I had a big trip out of town that I went through, and we went through all those pieces. Very, very nice. Bruce says, I got a resume scanned in JPEG format. Well, did you read it? Did it work? Did it happen? Those are things that happen too. So I will have another one of these study groups next month. The dates will be at professormesser.com/calendar. I'll also put notices out on Twitter, on Facebook, on Google+. And I will generally mention those things. If you registered for this one, I throw the registration list away and we start new next month, just so it's easier that way to make that happen. So thanks for joining us on the after show. We'll see you next month for a brand new Network Plus study group. Thanks, everybody.